Hello, scholars. I'm so glad that you joined me for today's art lesson. Today, we are actually going to learn about a brand new artist that we've never talked about before, and his name is Vincent van Gogh. Can we try saying his name all together? Vincent van Gogh. One more time. Vincent van Gogh. Good job, scholars. So, Vincent van Gogh, he was born a very, very long time ago. He was actually born in 1853. So, since he was born in 1853, that means that if he had a birthday today in 2020, he would be 167 years old. Can you imagine having a birthday and being 167 years old? That is just nuts. But Vincent, he's been famous for such a long time. Even though he's passed away already, he is still considered one of the most famous and most talented artists to ever live, like in the whole world. So, we're going to talk a little bit about his life today, and not just his life as a painter, but also his life before he was a painter, and why he is so, so special. And people think that he is just so creative and really admire his works even today. So, let's get started. So Vincent was actually from a place in Europe. We know that Europe is an entirely different continent, not just a different country, like a whole different continent. It's where I put this big pink circle, and it's all the way on the other side of the world. So he was from a place inside Europe called Holland. Now, Holland, that's this big word right here. Holland is a beautiful, beautiful place. They've got amazing long fields that are just full of flowers and beautiful, beautiful landscapes. And since it's so far away from a lot of cities, he actually didn't have a lot of neighbors. He lived a very quiet life with his family. And so he kind of draws a lot of inspiration from his country, from his hometown, and just from the beauty that comes from Holland and Europe. So, if you didn't already see this other side, Holland is really, really far away from California. Like we talked about last time, with New York being about 3,000 miles away, Holland is 9,000 miles away. So, this blue teardrop right here, that's where Shafter, California is. And if we follow the red line all the way across the ocean, we travel 9,000 miles to get to Holland. And if you took a plane to get to Holland, it would take you something crazy like 12 hours, like an entire half day. So even though it's really, really far away, it's really beautiful. And he actually moved to a few different places inside Europe. So now let's start talking about his childhood and what he did when he grew up. So because Vincent lived in Holland, and he kind of lived in like a farming house, he didn't have a lot of neighbors. He kind of had a lot of big fields and a lot of nature around him. He didn't live in a city, and so he started school at about 8 years old. And if you start school when you're in already 8 years old, that means that you're in about the third grade. And before he even went on to become a painter, he graduated from school and he had a lot of different jobs before choosing to start painting. So he didn't grow up like a little kid or even in school doing drawings or doing paintings. He didn't know what he wanted to do, and that's okay. So he became something like an art curator for a gallery. A curator is somebody who buys and sells paintings and teaches other people what paintings are about and the inspirations. And he even became a teacher for a while. He taught in a school, I believe, for boys, and he was just really, really intelligent and he loved to learn. But then he realized that he was kind of missing something and decided, you know what? I think that I want to go to school again, but not just regular school. I want to go to art school and I want to learn how to become a really, really talented painter. And that's exactly what he did. So he graduated from art school and he was just in love with painting. He thought he was going to be so, so happy. But to be a painter and to go up through art school is actually pretty tough. So he made it all the way through, and then afterwards he moved to a place called France. We've probably heard of France before. It's also in Europe, and he moved to this little place called Arles. It's kind of a mouthful to say, but Arles is in France, And it reminds him a lot of his home, his big field of a home in Holland, because it's full of just that beautiful, beautiful nature around him again. So before we move on, I wanted to take a quick look at some more paintings that he created after he finished art school. So this first one is just another self-portrait. He actually did a lot of self-portraits just like Frida, and his self-portraits were very, very creative also because they usually had really fun backgrounds. Sometimes he would be places, but sometimes it would just be him, like this one where it's just him. He's got this colorful background behind him. And then if you look at this bottom, let me switch my pen color. If you look at this bottom painting, this is actually a painting of his bedroom when he moved to France. So he also was a very big fan of painting the things that were just around him. Instead of coming up with things or coming up with new ideas or really out there crazy ideas to paint, he would just paint the things that he saw in his everyday life, which is also pretty nice because it lets us look at what he was creating and what he was looking at when he was alive. So it's actually super duper cool to be able to see something like this that looks just like what he was living in when he was in France, which I think is super cool. So now let's keep going. So, even though we consider Vincent van Gogh as one of like the greatest painters and artists to ever live, he was actually not popular when he was alive. He struggled a lot to get people to see his work. And because he struggled, he didn't make very much money. He was not famous at all. Usually, when you're famous, like Frida or like some of the other artists that we've learned about, you make a lot of money, you get to make things for famous people, but unfortunately, he didn't get to live that life. But when people started to notice his artworks, we can start to see all of his artworks on the walls of this museum. When they started to notice how great of an artist he was, they became famous, even though he wasn't alive anymore. You can see this building, it's kind of a funny shape, but this is actually the Vincent van Gogh Museum. And that means that this museum is dedicated only to all of the things that he created. So you can see all of these artworks that I circled here in pink. You can even see this big wall dedicated to a large artwork that he did. And it's a giant building that is just full of things that he created. And every single day it is filled with people, just like you see here, people that are waiting to just get a chance or take a picture of something that he created. So he may not have been popular while he was alive, but he's definitely getting all the recognition that he deserves today. So now let's start looking a little bit more closely at his paintings and what made them so special. So, scholars, now if you start looking at his artworks that I have here on the screen, these are two of his most famous artworks to come out. Sunflowers, that's here on the left side, was done in 1888, and The Starry Night, which I think lots of us probably recognize, was done in 1889. Now, I want to point out just a few things about these paintings that were so creative and people weren't really doing in 1889 or in 1888. Okay. So, Starry Night, if you take a look at it, it looks a little bit messy, but when you step back from the painting, you can actually see all of the amazing details that he would put into it. So, Starry Night, it's actually like the night view of this gorgeous village down here. And he focuses on the night. And he's got all these bright, big blue colors that all complement each other on this side. And then he's got all these gorgeous stars that I'm circling in red, and you can see how big and bright his moon was. So just like this one over here, sunflowers, that's done with such bright colors, that was kind of his theme for a lot of these creations. He loved to use these bright colors. He was not afraid of being big and bold with what he was creating, which makes them so much more beautiful when you step back and you look at them as one giant picture. Now, these weren't the only famous paintings that he created. He actually created a lot. In fact, he created so many that you can fill an entire museum with them. But now let's take a closer look at a few more that have a little bit smaller details than these. Okay, scholars, so before we get into the last part of our video, I want to draw some special attention to this white part of my screen that has the irises painting on it. So our irises painting was done by Van Gogh in 1889. And if you remember, 1889 was the same year that the Starry Night painting also came out. So if you notice, 1889 and also 1888 were very important years for Van Gogh because that's when we see a lot of his super duper famous, super talented work come out. Now, the Irises painting is extra special because it is one of the few paintings that is not in the Vincent van Gogh Museum all the way halfway across the world. So, this Irises painting is actually held at the J. Paul Getty Museum in Los Angeles. Now, if you don't know, Los Angeles is really close, it's only about 2 hours away. Now, since the museum that holds this painting is not open right now, you can actually take virtual tours to get a bigger and better look at the paintings. Now, if you haven't been to the Getty, I highly, highly recommend that you go as soon as we are able to. But this irises painting is really, really special for that reason because it's not often that we get to experience something that is so famous and from somebody who is so talented here in our California. So make sure you check that out when you get a chance. And now let's get into the Your Turn portion of the video. Okay, scholars, so now for your response to today's video, I want you to tell me your favorite thing that you learned about Vincent. If you need any help, you can always use this sentence right here. It's ready to go for you. And it says, my favorite thing I learned about Vincent van Gogh was, hmm. Now, this can be something that you learned about maybe his life, maybe his home, maybe his paintings and the colors that he liked to use. You can even talk about your favorite painting that you saw today if you want to. And remember, these are the places that you can upload your response to. Your response can be a short video, it can be maybe a picture with you writing out your sentence, it can be even just a simple comment in your Google Classroom assignment. Remember, Flipgrid is for our friends that are in Ms. Jensen's class. She's got her art showroom Flipgrid where you and your friends can check out each other's responses and learn what your favorite thing was. If you're not in Ms. Jensen's class, it's a-okay. Class Dojo and Google Classroom will work out just fine. And I'm really excited to see what you all thought was your favorite thing you learned. So I'll talk to you guys soon, and I'll see you later. Bye.